North Vietnamese cameraman. The outrage over the bombing directs itself against the few at hand. The US pilots become the target of Vietnamese propaganda. During interviews, individual prisoners are dragged into the international limelight. The camera turns into a tool for humiliation. The pilots are abused and exhibited. They are confronted with the victims of the bombing. In the brutality of this war, the camera is transformed into a weapon, also against the individual enemy. Khe Sanh, located just above the 17th parallel, the borderline between North and South Vietnam. A team from the Hanoi Army Film Studio shoots the legacy of one of the hottest battlegrounds of the Cold War. In the spring of 1973, the US troops finally withdraw after 8 years of war. The pictures foreshadow the price of victory. Hanoi Airport, March 29, 1973. The last 67 American prisoners are handed over to the US Army. The international press and a couple of camera teams of the Hanoi Army Film Studio document the pitiful sight of the American defeat. The pilots are the last war commodity to be traded as US troops completely clear Vietnam. But they are not the last victims of this war. After the retreat of the Americans, Vietnam remains a torn country that now, with international support, becomes the arena of a grim civil war. Strengthened by the victory over the Americans and determined to fulfill the historic mission of Ho Chi Minh, the Viet Cong start to overthrow the South piece by piece. Now Vietnamese shoot at Vietnamese. At the turn of the year 1973-74, the Viet Cong start to conquer the province of Phuc Long, 100 miles north of the capital, Saigon. The front cameraman, Nguyen Van Niem, is assigned to document the course of the battle with his camera. After a transport of several months on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, these pictures are edited at the Hanoi Army Film Studio, resulting in a documentary that still exists today. Honestly, as front cameraman, your assignment is very, very dangerous. I was injured 3 times. If you want to shoot good pictures, you can't think about cover. And if you're fighting on the same level as normal soldiers, you can't get good pictures. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
Front cameramen were something extraordinary. Specially trained, supplied with expensive equipment, they didn't want to rank behind the fighting troops in terms of bravery. On the Viet Cong side, more than 800 cameramen documented the course of the war, half of them paid with their life. Nguyen Van Niem believes that he owes his survival to the following occurrence.
Morgen früh, dann als wir dann rein in die Stützpunkt.
And on this morning, as we stormed an army base, I was running on the side of the road. Suddenly, I heard children crying.
So, dann haben sie mich sofort gehalten und verlangen
I stopped and asked our soldiers to release them from the hole in the ground that they were in and have them taken behind the front lines.
Der Front zu laufen, dann weiter kämpfen und dann haben wir.
I don't remember how many women and children we saved. Maybe 10 or 12. Could be that's why I survived.
Mehr, vielleicht dadurch, dann bin ich jetzt noch überlebt.
Spring 1975. The last act of the Vietnamese tragedy begins. During the Ho Chi Minh Offensive, the highly motivated and well-organized North Vietnamese army, together with the Viet Cong, conquer South Vietnam in a matter of weeks. In addition, the propaganda teams are well prepared and experienced. With the help of modern zoom cameras and additional teams for sound recording, they create dramatically condensed battle scenes. But also during the last act, the front cameramen stay true to themselves and their conviction. Their own victims are only marginally visible. Personal courage, and sometimes the highest stakes for a good picture, hallmark the recordings in March 1975. And a given sense of propaganda that takes care of the proper visual arrangements after the battle. The South Vietnamese army runs away. The American war equipment stays behind. And President Thieu escapes to Thailand. What remains is a country with a demarcation line that is no longer drawn by the 17th parallel, but by the confrontation between the victorious and the conquered. And a population that does not know the future under its new rulers. Saigon, April 30th, 1975. The tanks of the Viet Cong roll into the city without resistance. On a motorbike, Nguyen Van Niem tries to get through to the presidential palace to shoot the capitulation of the South Vietnamese government. He almost gets trapped in the enormous upheaval and crowds, arriving at the site shortly after the first troops. My first thought when I entered the palace was, yes, I survived. Peace. No more enemies. The army's gone and no more bombs. As we came into the palace of the South Vietnam regime, honestly, for the first time, I couldn't do my job anymore.
Ehrlich, konnte ich nicht mehr meine Aufgabe weiterführen. Dann habe ich meine Assistenzkamera gegeben.
And I handed the camera to my assistant. Here, shoot whatever you want. I need a couple of minutes for myself.
Ein paar Minuten für mich selbst. Und ich,
in the middle of the palace, there was a fountain. I looked at myself. I was all covered with dust, and I wanted to wash my face. During daytime, we couldn't do that. Always on death's doorstep, you couldn't possibly think of hygiene.
Und dann ich wollte meine Hände, mein Gesicht waschen, weil tagüber konnten wir das nicht machen. Zwischen Tod und Leben und Filmen, dann kann man nicht mehr an diese Sauberkeit. Und in diesem Moment,
And I suddenly noticed the drops running down my face into the fountain. They were red, slowly growing wider and wider.
Die Wassertropfen von meinem Gesicht kommen unten auf die Wasser von Brunnen rot und dann immer.
They were red from dust, not from blood. Your blood does not have to be shed anymore, I thought. It is peace now.
Ist auch rot von Staub, aber nicht rot von Blut.
That very moment was glorious, too great to be true. It felt like, yes, flying, flying.
Ich kann nicht mehr so als wahr so anfassen, sondern ich kann nur sagen, ja, fliegen, so irgendwie fliegen, ja.